We ourselves should not create scandals. As far as possible, we should be careful not to give cause for ugly situations to develop. Let us not open cracks to the deceiver, because the souls who have faulty thoughts are harmed and are only seeking an opportunity to justify themselves. Then we end up building with one hand and tearing down with the other. Some time ago, some young modern men came to my KLIPOVI and we had a discussion. That day I was planning to go out from the holy mountain. When they learned of this, they too decided to leave the mountain and came and sat beside me in the boat. They were asking me with great interest about various spiritual matters. However, some people on the boat misunderstood this and were looking at us suspiciously. If I could have foreseen that others would misunderstand our conversation, I would have taken measures to prevent it. People are devious. We must be careful not to create scandals. We are not responsible for what we cannot take measures to prevent or for matters in which we have no experience. But we must not expect a reward from God when we create problems through carelessness. We have a reward when we are careful, but the enemy creates problems nonetheless. Someone tells me, for example, that I am in error. First I will see if I am in error or not. I think to myself, for him to say that, he must have seen or heard something. He cannot just say that without any reason. He must have misunderstood something I said or did, and I try to find it out where or how I have been misunderstood in order to correct it. If he says that I am in error, a sorcerer, this is a gain for me, as people will not come to me and I will find some peace. But that poor man who says such things will be condemned because he harms the church. Isn't it a pity? And I am to blame because I was careless about something. Some people come to kiss my hand, and in an effort to avoid that, I pat them lightly on the head. One who sees that says, "Look, he is blessing them when he is only a monk. What does he think? He is a priest. It's not their fault. I should be careful not to do it again." Geronda, when someone out of carelessness creates a scandal, some people make the remark, "Leave him alone. He has the excuse of not being responsible for his actions." The excuse of irresponsibility applies only to one who cannot think, not to one who is careless. The careless person lights a fire and does not think that where he has lit it, it can cause a forest fire. When from time to time such a person lights a fire and sinks a few other souls in the process, we have a duty to pray and pour a pail or two of water onto the fire. Also there are others who are headstrong. They are pious to a fault, and when they hear something they disagree with, they react violently without first examining if it is right or wrong. It is then that we must sometimes discreetly step on the brakes, and again, when they stop, discreetly jam a stone against their tires to prevent them from rolling backwards and running over other souls.